Welcome back. In this module, we'll learn about television as a mass medium. And television is a fascinating platform where it's a creative aspect, and not only that. When you look back at human civilization, back in those days, people used to gather around, make fire, and watch till the fire dies and go to sleep. And that's what people in these days also do. They watch the light in front of the television set and they go to sleep, and it kind of runs in our genes. And this medium is so pervasive, people don't understand how much time they're spending in front of television. Recently I was reading an article, and that showed that an average person spends about 9 years of their life in front of television. That is how time consuming TV is, which you and me don't recognize. But in the long run, people, you and me, spend about 4 to 5 years in front of TV. So that's not very healthy. You should watch TV, but not this much. So the agenda for this class today is we are going to look at the evolution of television, and we also look at how television and audiences are connected, and how it has become an integral part of our lives. I think you will be having a fair good understanding of how television operates and how it all started. This is my first thing I want to start with. Television had a great impact in my life. As I was growing up as a kid, one of my favorite show was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and it was broadcast on Sunday morning at 9:30. There were only two channels, Channel 1 and Channel 2, and that too they had very limited hours. And I still remember very clearly the day when my dad bought a television set, and I think that was the best day ever, and it had remote control. Um, it was so nice because till up that point, I used to go to my friend's place to watch TV. I used to literally beg my friends, man, can I come and crash at your place? I want to watch this. But I still remember the day my dad got the television set. The name was called BPL TV, which is British Physical Laboratories. They're known for making good quality television set. And ever since that, I think things have been completely different. I used to watch TV all the time while I'm studying, while I am eating. So television will be pretty much on most of the time. That's how television impacted me in my life. And as I grew up, I kind of grew out of it. Even though sometimes these days when I'm really down, I watch He-Man sometimes on YouTube. Anyway, let's get started. So I think at a time when people wanted to kind of see their own images in photographs, they also was thinking about what if we can broadcast image of people through some kind of medium. And Paul Nipko was the first pioneer who gave infrastructure or the mechanism of how images can be broadcast. And this was the first disc, which was called the Nipko disc, where they used to make holes over a disc, and through a neon lamp they were able to recreate images. And this was kind of very crude, and they started working on it, and it took almost 30-40 years to get some kind of framework for that. And it was not just one person, there were several people who worked in the growth of television. And one such scientist was a German physicist, Ferdinand Braun. He came up with the cathode ray tubes, where it gave television a better quality and better boost of image transmission. And again, this was all small inventions that helped in the growth of television overall. And it was John Logie Baird. He's a Scottish engineer and inventor. He is credited with being the father of television. Even though there were several people who worked in the growth of television, John Logie Baird, he took the credit for being the father of television. And this is an image where in 1925 he was able to broadcast images that kind of helped in the growth of television in the long run, and also gave a framework for the television industry to operate. So yes, you're able to broadcast images, but how people are going to receive it. So there were a lot of glitches initially, and it took a lot of years to overcome that. Imagine Paul Nipko patented his Nipple Disc in 1884, but it almost took 45 years for a television to kind of get some kind of framework to work upon. So it was not overnight, it took a lot of time. And this is the first known photograph of a moving image produced by John Logie Bates televisor. Back in those days it was televisor, now we call it television, where it's nothing but tele means far or distant, and vision is the images. Oh, images are broadcast from a distance, and this was in 1926. So again, this was a landmark in the age, in the growth of television. And this image was kind of crude, it kind of was blurry, but it was the start of a lot of beautiful things to come. Again, it took several years for people in the industry to come together to find out the right gadgets that can be used for television to watch, and also the right gadgets to transmit the images as well, because it had two components. First is you need to kind of produce the images, and then we need to broadcast these images, and then we need and good gadgets to receive those signals. So there are a lot of levels and layers that involved in the television industry. And NBC, which is also the national broadcasting company, was the first company to broadcast regular television broadcast in this country, and it was in 1939 during the New York World Fair. And again, it took again several years to also get to a point where they can show color photographs. And again, John Logie Baird also was very instrumental in bringing in colors as well. So it was first crude images, and then it was black and white, and then it was color. But it again took several decades for a color television to come into the television industry, because in the 1950s this was still beginning of 1950s, it was still black and white television transmission. But the first color transmission was only during 1954. So it was almost 16 years after this color television photograph. This was on the New Year's Eve during 1954, and you can still look up online to see some of the images that was broadcast on this important day, when people were able to see things in color. And again, color TV was little more expensive than the regular black and white, and it was almost till even 1990s that they were still selling black and white televisions in many countries around the world. Maybe US was in terms of advanced in terms of having color televisions, but many countries around the world were still happy watching images, whether it's black and white, they were just happy with that. And again, it changed the people they enjoyed life. For instance, earlier, prior to television, people had to literally go to a concert or literally go to a stadium and literally go physically to a place to see something. But television gave them the flexibility right in the living room. It brought the entire world to them. They could see a parade, they could see games, they could watch concerts, they could listen to music as well as watch their favorite movie stars. So it changed the way people consume the time as well as the content as well. And television was the first medium to potentially tap this, and again, it was a very important medium. So television was not only able to broadcast images and color images to a wide audience, but information traveled at a very, very fast pace. Radio gave the flexibility to get the news, but to get the news in images, it was television which had the appeal. And that was a great potential for advertisers, because it was a great medium to reach their audiences. And they cashed in with this spectacular gadget, where people were able to see the images as well as receive the content. This was a color TV from 1956, and look at the design of it. Like, you have kind of an oval shape, and again, these are the television which used cathode ray tubes for transmission. and you see the two knobs on the side. I have seen it and I've used it. So the one of the knobs is for a channel to get the right frequency. So sometimes it's not easy to get the frequency, so they have to make sure they come to the right frequency so as to pick up the signals through the antenna or the aerial wires. And then the other one is for volume, and sometimes it used to be also for contrast as well. So this is how a television looked like in the 1950s, and you can see it evolved into different things. Back in those days, this was a television set which was the state of the art TV, like the latest iPhone 7. This was something that everybody had to have, and it costed about $1,300, which was a big deal back then in the 1950s. And then right now, this is one, I think this was in it was in 2014 or something, where this is a more than a life size plasma TV with almost 4K transmission and also 3D capabilities. This was I think in Asia, and the cost of this TV is around $500,000. And this is a Panasonic television. I think there are many television manufacturers, and the point that I'm trying to convey is that look at the size of the TV and the capability of TV that has happened in the last 50 years. It has come, we have definitely come a long way in terms of the impact of television on us. And as I told you, television is something that people actually spend a lot of time. Close to 9 years is what an average person spend in front of television sets. And if you look at statistics, there are like, there are a lot of statistics which tell you that kids spend a lot of time in front of TV, and a lot of age groups spend a lot of time in front of the television. So television is a pervasive medium, and it actually revolves around us, because when you look at somebody talking about something, must be something about what they saw on TV recently. Hey, did you see what happened in London? There was an attack and it was really horrible. And did you see what happened in Mississippi? A plane crashed with almost 17 Marine. So this is how it kind of gave a kind people something to talk about, and it was a medium that connected people of all age groups and all different strata of society, and that is the power of television. And this is why advertisers flock to television to promote their brands. And we're talking about very sophistication, not only in terms of the television, but also we're talking about in terms of the quality, technical quality and specifications. We're talking about standard dynamic range and high dynamic range. From a point where we could only create blurry images, we are now come to a point where we are talking about crystal clear images with surround sound quality audio. And we have definitely come a long way, and I still have a feeling that we have a long way to go in terms of the growth and future of television. And just like in movies, there is also a period in television where it was considered a golden age. Look at 1950. Okay, in 1950, I think the first transmission happened around 1939, and slowly it took a lot of time for television to gain momentum across the country. In 1950, there were only about 9% of the household which had access to TV. But within 15 years, almost 92.6% had television in their house. That's how it's a powerful medium was the television. Within a short span, it almost penetrated the entire population, and that is why it's called this called the age of television, because the 1950s saw the exploding growth of television, because everybody was talking about it. And it was not only the growth of television. Kennedy cashed in on television. If you're still talking about Kennedy as a legend, as an icon, it's because of television, because he was one of the smart presidents who actually cashed and understood the importance of television and used it as a medium to promote himself in the field of politics. And also he's left a kind of he left as a legendary figure because he used TV so well. I think still a lot of people will think about the classic presidential debate that happened between Kennedy and his opponent, and a lot of people who saw Kennedy thought he won, and a lot of people who listened to radio thought the other candidate won. And again, Kennedy actually used television effectively. And if you look at the statistics more, I think again this is again very good statistics, where you look at the viewership base from the 50s to 2000, the graph is always on the rise. which means you can see a little dip here and there, but actually it's a graph that's actually pointing up. That is a sign that television is ever growing popular medium. And again, this is another statistic which tells you how many number in terms of the television household in millions. In 2000 there are 102.2 million households. By 2015 there is about 116. As I told you in the beginning of the television itself, I think everybody has like 3 or 4 television sets. I'm not exaggerating. Seriously, every friend's house I walk into, I think they have at least a television in the living room, which would be a 50-inch or a 60-inch, and a small television in the toilet where they can watch something. And there is a television in the bedroom because they want to see something and go to sleep. So television is like practically, if you have a room, you should have a TV. That's how it is. And if you have kids or something, if you just put TV on and then you can let them watch and you can do all the other stuff, they won't bother you for the next couple of hours. So that's the reason you see there's so much of presence of television. And if you have to think, what do you think is the function of television? You try to answer the question and you'll be surprised that a lot of people will say, oh, I'm watching television for my favorite cartoon or for my favorite program or movies or news. Yes, those are the function of television. It informs us, it educates us, it entertains us, it helps us escape sometimes, it helps us kill your time, lots of stuff. But the one important thing you need to keep in mind is, this is the answer: television executives or television producers, they're actually delivering uh, the audience. That is the most important aspect. So audience is the product for television executives. So if you think it's something is being delivered to you, it's not they're not delivering any content to you. It's actually they're delivering you to advertisers. That is what the television industry is doing, and we should be always be aware of this fact, that the television medium exists for the advertisers to reach us, not the other way around. And you might wonder, so how does this happen really? Like, I'm watching my favorite program, and what do you mean advertisers are able to reach us? As I told you, television is a very powerful medium because it reaches a very wide audience at a very short span of time. And that is why a Super Bowl ad, they charge about $4 to $5 million for a 30-second spot. None of the medium, none of the mass media that we're talking about can demand so much money. Television demands so much money. It's because of the efficiency of reaching a wide mass of people at a very short span. And this is achieved by a process called ratings, where there are rating mechanism in place, where they will give you a very clear data of how many people are watching certain episode or a certain show during a certain point in time, during a certain point in the day, to advertisers. And this is what is something that we need to keep in mind, that television is big money, big business, and this is being done by this rating system, which we'll see about in detail. And what do you think is the most popular media among US adults? Naturally, right? Television. Yes, obviously, right? But you'll be surprised. So there was a recent study which was done, and it gave a completely different figure. We'll look about it. But the fact is, the only company which does a rating in this country is Nielsen, where they claim they have mechanism in place to monitor how people are spending time in front of the tablets, in front of the desktops, in front of the laptops, in front of the iPods or iPads or tablets or smartphones and games. They say they have scientific mechanism in place to gather data. For instance, Nielsen says that it has close to about 2 million people spread across the country as their sample population, which is a representative of how people are watching television. and they claim it's scientific. For instance, we discussed earlier in some of the classes that they have this journal, diary, and people and personal portable meter where it records people's watching pattern, and thereby they collect the data, and this is done over 3 or 4 times spread across every 3 months across the year. And whenever the rating comes out, they will give us, oh, this was the top rated show. How did we know that Rush Limbaugh show was the most listened to talk show? Is because Nielsen. And how did we know that Sean Hannity and Delilah and All Things Considered are one of the top 5 shows? It's because of the rating system that's in place, where Nielsen gathers data and submits it, and advertisers based on the rating decide to spend money on that. Every company sets aside millions and millions of dollars to advertise, and based on the ratings they'll say, okay, for instance, I am a laundry detergent advertiser, and I really want to see where I can advertise, where most of the women watch, and basically I will gear my advertisement towards that program where it's watched by most women. And I think one of the top shows is Family Feud, where they found out that most number of women across the United States watch Family Feud, and they spend a lot of money for advertisement for that particular slot. So this is how it works, and Nielsen is one of the leaders, and they're the only monopoly in terms of ratings of stuff that across various mass media, and they in turn give the data to the consumers, and that's how the consumers are being sold to the advertising agencies. And this was the article I was talking about, that radio is seems to be the most popular across the country. Look at the number. The AM and FM radio is about 240 million in any given month, and live DVR or a time shift of TV is about 226 million. So as I told you, AM radio is very convenient, because when people drive to work and come back to work, they actually spend a time on radio, and that's the reason is kind of given that figure. And again, radio and television are most popular, but radio is the number one in terms of the reach, followed by television. And looking at the ratings as such, the rating system is not only the show tell us how much shows are being watched. They also give you various details and data, like the characteristics of the consumers, what are the age group they fall under, what is the income level, and where do they live, and what is their ethnicity. So they are able to compile so many data and sell it to advertisers. And this is a great medium, because earlier there was not any mechanism in place for the advertisers to know, like, how it is reaching so many people and how it's impacting us. Nothing is in place. But here they have so much of data, and with so much of data available, they are able to market their product well, targeting at a specific audiences. And that's what television does. And also, a lot of people are nowadays actually called cable cutters. They don't want to, because cable is a rip off. You and me know that. Imagine just to watch few channels, and people are spending about like $70 or $80. Yeah. And I think people are now cutting their cables, and instead using a lot of other platforms like Hulu and Amazon and Netflix and other websites where they provide like good service. And I use a service where sometimes I really can watch television channels from across the world. Maybe I can show you right now. Maybe I think it might be illegal also, but never mind. Just understand the concept. But people do stuff to watch TV where they don't use a traditional television set, and that's called zero TV consumers. So, anyways, let me wind up my talk for the day. I know I gave you a lot of information. So, by the end of this presentation, you should be able to answer these questions. And once you're able to answer this, please upload it to D2L at the earliest. Have a nice day. I will see you soon.